Hello to my sweet third graders, my VSE third graders. I'm outside my home enjoying this beautiful sunshine, and I thought I'd read some of my Harry Potter book to you, okay? So let's enjoy. I'm starting on page 40. Page 40.
Hey, Sharks.
Since Vernon didn't go to work that day, he stayed at home and nailed up all the mail slots. See, he explained to Aunt Petunia through a mouthful of nails, if they can't deliver them, they'll just give up. I'm not sure that'll work, Vernon. Oh, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me, said Uncle Vernon, trying to knock in a nail with a piece of fruit cake Aunt Petunia had just brought him. On Friday, no less than 12 letters arrived for Harry. As he couldn't go through the mail slot, they had been pushed under the door, slotted through the sides, and a few even forced through the small window in the downstairs bathroom. Uncle Vernon stayed at home again. After burning all the letters, he got out a hammer and nails and boarded up the cracks around the front and back door so no one could go out. He hummed Tiptoe Through the Tulips as he worked and jumped at small noises. On Saturday, things began to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry found their way into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each of the 24 eggs that their very confused milkman had handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window. While Uncle Vernon made furious telephone calls to the post office and the dairy trying to find someone to complain to, Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her food processor. Who on earth wants to talk to you this badly? Dudley asked Harry in amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but happy. No post on Sundays, he reminded them cheerfully as he spread marmalade on his newspapers. No letters today. Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke and caught him sharply on the back of his head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came belting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one. Out! Out! Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floors. That does it, said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. I want you all back here in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes and no arguments. He looked so dangerous with half his mustache missing that no one dared argue. 10 minutes later, they had wrenched their way through the boarded up doors and were in the car, speeding toward the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. They drove and drove. Even Mrs. Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then, Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. Shake 'em off, he would mutter whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink all day long. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He never had had such a bad day in all his life. He was hungry. He'd missed 5 television programs he wanted to see, and he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Vernon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with 2 twin beds and damp sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights of passing cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast that day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came over to the table. "Excuse me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter? Only I got about 100 of these at the front desk." She held up a letter so they could read the green ink address. "Mr. H. Potter, room 17, Railview Hotel, Cokeworth." Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it just be better just to go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly, hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove them into the middle of a forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, got back in the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of a plowed field, halfway across a suspension bridge, and at the top of a multi-level parking garage. "Daddy's gone mad. Daddy's gone mad, hadn't he?" Dudley asked Aunt Petunia late that afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked at the coast, locked them all inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniveled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Humbero's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with a television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. If it was Monday, and you could usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of television, then tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dudleys had given him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you weren't 11 every day. Uncle Vernon was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he'd bought. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a large rock way out at sea. Perched on top of the rock was the most miserable-looking shack you could imagine. One thing was certain, there was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Vernon gleefully, clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came up, pointing with a rather wicked grin at an old rowboat bobbing in the iron-gray water below them. "I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat. Icy sea spray and rain crept down their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to the broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's ration turned out to be 2 bags of chips each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty chip bags just smoked and shriveled up. "Could do with some of those letters now," he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought no one stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, though that thought didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Spray from the high wind splattered the walls of the hut, and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a moldy blanket in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went off to a lumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could and to curl up under thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm raged more and more as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The lighted dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa of his fat wrist, told Harry he'd be 11 in 10 minutes. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember it all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes ago, Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Privet Drive would be so full of letters when they got back that he'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes to go. What was that funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go and he'd be 11. 30 seconds, 20, 10, 9. Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1, boom. The whole shack shivered and Harry sat upright, staring at the door. Something was outside, knocking to come in. All right, we're starting chapter 4, and I'll just read a couple more pages. Chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause, then smash. The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway, his face almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard. But you could make out his eyes, glitting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into the frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could you? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, ya great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "Ah, here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you, you were only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Oh, shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you, fella, here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." From an inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squished box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry," written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth. And what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I hadn't introduced myself. Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds at Hogsworth. He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about the tea then, he said, rubbing his hands together. I'd not say no to something stronger if you got it, mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled chip bags in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he'd sunken into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squeaky package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chip mugs, and a ball of some amber liquid that he took a swig from before he started to make the tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausage. No one said a thing when the giant was working. But as he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. All right, I read pages 40 through 48, and I have 2 questions for you, okay? You'll answer these questions on Class Dojo, okay? Question 1. Where does Mr. Dursley take the family, and why does he take them to this place? I'll read the first question again. Where does Mr. Dursley take the family, and why does he take them to these places? Okay, question 2. How would you describe Mr. Dursley based on his actions toward Harry and the letters? Question 2, I'll read it again. How would you describe Mr. Dursley based on his actions toward Harry and the letters? I hope you enjoyed my reading. This is such a great book, and I cannot wait to see your answers. All right? Be blessed and have a good day and stay safe, all right?
See ya!
See ya!